overall, trafficking, and from experiences which you get to hear from activities from all the participants who have been lucky to have been rescued, or those who have actually participated in it and fallen victims, we've been able to see that it's an ongoing thing. And it's just like crime. As long as the demand is there, you always have traffickers.
Trafficking rarely happens in the open. It moves quietly through back roads, border towns, waterways, and digital pathways, often unseen, yet highly organized. While many people struggle to cross borders legally and safely, trafficking networks continue to operate with alarming ease. It's another edition of Across Borders here on Soup News TV, the program that examines migration, movement, and the systems that shape how and why people cross borders. My name is Grace Komalafe, and today we shall be focusing on one of the most complex and hidden aspects of cross-border movement, and that is trafficking. We want to look at how trafficking routes are formed, why some borders appear porous for traffickers but restrictive for ordinary citizens, and the structural gaps that allow these networks to persist. We also will explore how data mapping and accountability can help expose trafficking pathways and strengthen protection for vulnerable populations. Joining us is Dr. Kakpo Ayorinde, a geospatial data analyst who brings a data-driven perspective to understanding trafficking routes, border vulnerabilities, and enforcement blind spots. Hello and good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you join us today.
Pleasure is mine.
Great. So I would like us to first start from the topic, the subject for today, which is trafficking. I want to ask you, to what extent would you say trafficking is, should I say flourishing? That's the right word. So is it increasing or is reducing? And I wanted to look at it from your perspective, collecting data and all of that. How would you say this is going around?
Trafficking is increasing because the demand for it is rising, and it's demand driven based on the hope of better future in the developed countries, Europe for example. And as long as there's always a need for it, people would always go through the routes to traffic. And since the people are willing to be trafficked, the traffickers will always smile to the bank with lofty promises to them. Looking at the IMO data for 2024, they recovered almost about 9,000 people died through trafficking globally over the world. And in Africa alone, we had over 2,200 that died as a result of trafficking. Well, of course, we are still expecting the data for 2025, which we are just about to come out now since we're in a new year. But overall, trafficking, and from experiences which you get to hear from activities from all the participants who have been lucky to have been rescued, or those who have actually participated in it and fallen victims, we've been able to see that it's an ongoing thing. And it's just like crime. As long as the demand is there, you always have traffickers.
Okay, so what would you say kind of determine the routes that the traffickers actually use?
What determines the routes is, first and foremost, enforcement. Now, traffickers don't like to pass through the long formal routes where you have high border presence. So they go through informal routes, which are the crossings nearby, either through the boats, if it's riverine area, or long paths. And the common one now is even through the desert, which, because of the terrain there, it's a porous thing. And so they are under-resourced in border control there. So that's a major part there. So that route, it's a major influence that actually drives, is a major driver that drives the trafficking.
Okay, so you've talked about the route as a major driver. But again, I want to ask, sometimes we'll see that some routes are more easier, for them. Yes, we know that we have securities personnel in all of those routes, but you find that some are that easy for them to go through, while some are not that easy. And for those routes that are even easy for them to go through, you see that it's kind of difficult for the ordinary citizen to use that same route. So why is it like that?
Well, it's like that because of two reasons. One, corruption is there, because some of these border control agents have been compromised And so they give the traffickers routes to pass through. Then, two, the traffickers know this route very well. They are familiar with it. They're even familiar with the communities passing through all these informal routes. And so these routes are less guarded and it's easier for them to pass through it. Now, these routes are not fixed because the routes are actually dynamic. Because once there's enforced engagement, border control from the neighboring countries into it, the traffickers usually divert and take other routes to it.
Okay.
So that's one of the major challenges there.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you now that what does geospatial data, reveal about border porosity and the specific locations where trafficking networks tend to operate with less resistance?
If you look at the trafficking network, let's take example the Nigeria-Libya, passing through the Agadas, Sabah, up to Tripoli, down to Sabrata. It passes through a route. Now, the major route they pass through first is through Sokoto. Some pass through Kano. From Kano, they pass through Katsina, Zamfara, up to Etulia. Now, all these are routes that can be mapped. Locations are there. Now, we have securities along the route. We have border assets along the route. Yes, during the movement within Nigeria, because of the freedom of movement within the country, it might be difficult to actually pinpoint who is a trafficker and who is a normal migrant. But at the border points, around those areas with Ilele where they go to organize, there are routes which they pass through. And these routes can be mapped. Like from the Ilele now to the Agades is about 1,000 kilometers. Though some of the routes are through the desert, some are paved, some are unpaved route. But the major route which is actually a challenge there is the route through the Agadas to the Sabah. Because that one is through a desert route. And it's a very tortuous route there. So, and because of the challenges in security in the neighboring countries, the Sahel countries, like Niger, due to the Turags attacks and the Islamic militants that are encroaching into it, coming from Libya, Burkina Faso into it, it's a major challenge to them too. And so all these kind of things encourage the traffickers, because traffickers will simply settle the militias along the way who will give them free passage to pass. So it's a major challenge. But at the key point there is, for every route they pass, they must get through a major town because they will not stay in the desert. Their end place is towards the coastal area in Libya. So the main town they pass through can be mapped. The border assets which you have within the country, whether it's at Ilela, whether it's at the one at Chad, wherever, can be mapped. We can look at the assets. We can carry out a buffer and see the coverage. That way we can see the service coverage gaps that we have in between it and see the blind spot areas. We can also collect data from past experiences from those who have been caught, traffickers who have been caught, couriers who have been caught, and even victims who have been rescued. We can build a timeline, a diagonal map of how their route passes. So with this now, we can now juggle it together, have a cross-interagency collaboration. Yes, there may be corruption in some places, but even amidst the corruption, if we carry out proper interagency cooperation, cross-border intelligence monitoring, like I know there is one they have in the customs, despite the fact that you have the corruption rampant in the customs border, it's usually a particular period whereby even the smugglers themselves will move because you have teams coming from the federal operation units who are not into the place. So these have to be put into play. So if we carry out the proper mapping of these assets, know our coverage areas, we can now turn this data into information that can be useful for intelligence and combating the traffickers.
So if you're talking about cross-border relationship, how well would you say the bordering countries with Nigeria, how well would you say the relationship is? Is it smooth enough to be able to work together? Because I get to hear some of the returnees when they share their story. I mean, they are often pathetic stories. And you'll be wondering, are there synergy? Do we have synergy between these governments? Because even at some point when they get to any of this destination that is outside Nigeria, for example, the experience they have, do you understand? The experience they have, it's more like, some of them are being treated like they are not even humans. So I begin to wonder about cross-border relationship. You understand what I'm saying? How effective is it? Is there any relationship at all? If there are, what are those policies that are in place that helps to guide these people maybe when they are being captured, when they are arrested, or when, I mean, I'm talking about the victims now. When they rescue them from, do they even rescue them in the first place, or they just capture them and get them arrested and all of that? I mean, I want you to really speak to this.
I think the International Organization on Migration is actually trying a lot in terms of for the victims. I think about last year or there about they repatriated over about 300 and something from Libya back to the country. But be that as may be, we also have our embassies, our high commissions in all these countries you are talking about. Just of recent, maybe last year was when we had challenges with the Sahel countries. Otherwise, Niger and the rest of them were Burkina Faso. We're all still part of ECOWAS. And under ECOWAS, there's a migration treaty. And that's the one that allows for free movement of goods and services. Now, people usually misabuse that migration because ideally, you are not meant to go to another country and start working without due permission. So there's a need for education on it. That migration is meant for you to go there for at least 3 months to stay there without any regularization. It is after that 3 months that you now need to regularize if you want to carry out your business. Otherwise, it's meant for you to just travel as a tourist. But over here, we misabuse it. Most of the time, people use it for business and what have you. Then people don't follow the proper documentation. Most people pass through the border, just give money to those who cross them by, and they are not properly stamped at border. So there's no evidence that they actually even entered the country to start with. So that's one of the challenges with the victims, because when they don't pass with proper documentation, how can we even say you are in our country? Where's your passport to show that you arrived in our country? So as far as the other countries are concerned, you are an illegal. You're an illegal immigrant. Same thing that is happening in the US now, in which Donald Trump is dealing with. Once you don't enter properly through the right document, through the right process, the country will not term you as a visitor having the benefit of it. And even you have challenges with even your own embassy too. Because when they look at your paper, they see that there was no proper documentation for no migration that put you through the country legally. So that's a major challenge that the victims have. Okay. Of course, our embassies too have to also step up to them. So I know they too are understaffed. They have under resources. The resources are not enough for them. But even as it is, little they have, if they can work in collaboration with the IMO, which is actually doing a lot, they can at least assist, even minimal, to put
when you say the agencies are understaffed, I mean, is it that is it the money to be able to pay salaries, or there are no people? Because I know there are a lot of youth out there that are jobless. So when you say they are staffed, how did we get to that point where an embassy is understaffed? And in that area, it affects the productivity. Do you understand? And affecting their productivity also means affecting the people. Affecting the people. What do you think? I mean, I'm just concerned about that.
You are going to another realm entirely.
But it is what it is.
It's a public thing, because you know that one of the reasons why we've not had ambassadors since was because there was no fund to pay them. In fact, some of our embassies and high commissions, some of them are owing rents, some of them are owing even contract staffs in the countries there. So you can see that it's a major financial.
And we have key people who are being paid some huge amount of money as salaries. Okay, let's not go there. Let's not go there. So looking at border infrastructure, government assets. So you talk about the people crossing the victims. Is there an enforcement gap? Would you say there is an enforcement gap? Because in the first place, why do we have those people that crosses them? Why do we have them? If things are meant to go legally, having everything going properly the way it should be, I don't think there should be someone that would say, "Oh, bring this amount, let me cross you." And if you have them, they should be able. I mean, the enforcement or people, security personnel should be able to bring them to book. And again, you see that the traffickers, it's so easy for them to evade detection. Is there an enforcement gap, or the structure is just not in place at all?
No, there's a big enforcement gap. One of the problems they have is the cross mandates between the agencies. You have the custom there, you have the immigration there, you have the police there at the border. Sometimes you have the DSS, so many security agents are all there, and there is no synchronization of them. Now, NAPTI, that is supposed to be in charge of prohibition of trafficking of people, they are limited in resources to their personnel limited, but even where they are limited, they don't have this synergy among them, this collaboration where they share intelligence. Now, it's not compulsory that every security agent has to be at the border point, because that itself leads to another problem, leading to queues, quagmire, and affecting normal movement and migration. But they can be called in when they are needs for suspicion. So when the border agent suspects that this particular person might be a trafficker or this, then they can now call that person aside and now involve those who are qualified, like NAPTI, to come and interrogate or possibly profile them, not interrogate this time, but profile them to ascertain truly that they are not traffickers. And like I mentioned before, there is still the corruptions among even the security agents, allowing some of these traffickers to go. Some of them go at night when security measures are lapsed during nocturnal movement. Some go by the river, some go by even the informal settlement through communities and what have you. So it's there, and it's a major issue, especially in the northern side, because at the northern side you have a large expanse of desert that is porous that anybody can almost walk through. So enforcement gap there is beyond, has to go beyond just having border posts. Like I remember the time when I served in Jigawa, there's a border called the Megatari. The only thing that allows you to know that it's a border is just the drum, the burial drum there, one stick and there. And people just walk through. In fact, you can even walk at the side of the border post into Niger there. So that's how porous so the terrain too is a contributory factor to it. But notwithstanding, we must go beyond, technology has advanced now, we must go beyond just border posts. We need to involve things like area drones. In time past, I think the custom and immigration used to have helicopters or planes where they fly around. But now drones have even made it much easier. They can have drones that cover large areas repeatedly, where even enforcement, human movement cannot be. So because this will not help them real-time monitoring, so that by the time the drone picks any image or sees any person, it can easily alert a control center, a command center, and they immediately raise an enforcement team to go and check it. And so they have a faster response time with it. So we have drone images, geospatial drone images that gives you real-time information. Then you can overcome things like the large terrain of border. Yes, the terrain is still there, but with drones you can mitigate it to a large extent.
So when you're talking about the drone, I think you're actually talking about the mapping,
Yes,
mapping of this area.
mapping,
So
yeah.
so can it actually help to get to identify the patterns of these traffickers?
Yes,
and all,
it can.
and all
It
of
can
that?
help to identify. I told you that the traffickers, no matter their informal routes, have a target to a town. And wherever they are, they must still link up to the main route to get to the town. So by the time you have drones mapping all these informal routes, you can see where they are moving through. Though these informal routes too are also routes in which the local communities too pass through. And that's why they have to have a kind of synergy, collaboration with the local community, with the local chiefs, so that they can give them information about who and who is passing through. So with that, they can be able to identify and delineate traffickers. And also they also have a cross collaboration between the countries themselves, the border agencies, because these traffickers don't have unlimited supply of resources. If whatever vehicles they are using, they must use it repeatedly. Whoever the drivers they are using, they must use it repeatedly. And so by the time they have this collaboration information with the other border agents surrounding it, they can profile and identify which routes these vehicles are passing through. Also with the information from the victims too, they have to take a proper information, geolocated, so they will have this information to be able to properly profile and get these victims on, get this data on top. And with this data, they can nip the traffickers' routes in bud.
Okay, so talking about having to see drums, I think you mentioned that earlier, and all of that. I remember when I do travel to the north during the NYC days, you see the security agents around. You see vehicles queue up, and I don't see so much. Rather than you know that this person is a uniformed person, and you just have to park, and they'll look at you. They can just tell you to park for maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes, nothing really serious. And the next thing, they ask you to go. You see some of them not even properly dressed. You see some of them, they are inside their cover, their shield there. They just draw, they will draw their stick with a little small drum. They will draw it back. You can go. I think we need to do beyond that. I mean, what are measures that you think should be in place to equip the security agents at this border sports that will help them? We never can tell. There could be one or two issues, that have actually demoralized them, maybe so to say, not to make them to carry out their assignment effectively. Or what do you think?
Well, I think the new administration now under the Minister of Interior, Botunji Joe, has actually tried to bring about changes into the immigration, both in the passports collection and even in the staff themselves. And in terms of their payment personnel, I think as far as immigration is concerned, the immigration, the fire service, and the prisons, which are all under the same ministry, their pay packet is among one of the top paying packets among the paramilitary that we have. So yes, the economy is there. It might not be enough, but what they are earning is actually substantial,
Okay.
more than what the core civil servants will earn. So I don't think the payment is really the issue there. Now the issue there now is how to increase enforcement. I know they have a control center now at the airport, immigration control center, but they have not done much on the land borders. I know they are trying some activities there. As far as the semi-border, I think there was a security post, an ECOWAS post or something that was done some years ago there. But the major issue where we have is at the northern borders. Like you said, the northern borders are very porous and it's due to the terrain. And that's why we have to adopt technology to it. So we need to have things like drones that give us area and real-time view. We need to also use high-resolution satellites, where we can get information, data on the terrain, high-resolution data on the terrain that gives us a high spatial coverage, because drone might be limited in terms of its coverage area, but using a high-resolution satellite data of about 0.5 meters, just as you have on your Google Earth map, which you use for your navigation, will also give us a better view. We can be able to assess the routes, the footpath routes, the terrain routes, the migratory routes, and look at all the encumbrances in terms of natural encumbrances, geographical features like water bodies, rivers, rocks that might encompass the border patrol area there. And also look at the communities too, because you also have to do a proper mapping of communities. And that's why one agency too has to come into play, the National Border Development Agency. And it also has to come into play. So it's not just one thing for just NAPTI alone. It's a joint collaboration. It's a task force thing. In developed countries, they have what they call task force. And Nigeria too, we also have it just as we have in the Northeast agencies, where you have different agencies coming, the Army, the Air Force, civilian. So we also have to have such a joint task force for trafficking, where we have the immigration, we have the custom, we have NAPTI, we have the border control agencies there, all together working. So that is a synergy of information, because so much information is lost at their different respective agencies where they are. But if all these informations can be collated together in a central database where they can be geolocated together, then it will have better reinforced information to tackle the traffickers.
Because everybody will have access to that information. You are not generating your own separately.
Yes.
Okay, that works. So talking about collaboration and all that. So ECOWAS, you mentioned ECOWAS. What role would you say ECOWAS is playing as a body in all of this? Because the movement we're talking about, the borders we're talking about, is not just within Nigeria. It's from one African country to another, and even outside, even to Europe and all of that. So let's come home. ECOWAS, what role are they playing in helping all of these countries to ensure that these things are being taken care of or even reduced to the barest minimum?
ECOWAS is trying. In fact, the African Union is also trying. They have a migration route guideline system for all the African countries. They have a code sharing intelligence system too that they're implementing. But the problem lies with the enforcement, the implementation. Yes, you may have a good policy framework, but if the implementation is not properly done, it's a big challenge. And the border lines over the years, not only limited to Africa, even in developed countries, have always been seen as areas where people can make easy money by just turning a blind eye. And so you always have corrupt agents in there. But what they can do is to carry out proper shifting. Don't let there be random shifting, so that you don't have just one particular set there, so that they can be moved at any point in time, so that the relationship, the familiarity of relationship that develops between the criminal elements and the traffickers with the border control people would not develop, will not have enough time to bosom before they are transferred out. So when you have a proper routine shift of them, you're able to minimize this corruption to a barest minimum. Not eliminate it, we cannot eliminate it, but we can minimize it to a barest minimum. So ECOWAS is trying, at least at the southern border, in the Lagos, Cotonou, Ivory Coast, all the border there, there's a major road and there's proper policing there. But the major challenge is still at the northern border too.
Dr. Kakpo, what do you think should be done? If you ask me, I think there should be more development in that area, especially, I don't know, even if you have to use the whole area for farming, one way or the other, you still see people find their way to get to do things. But when you have the government, taking charge, taking control, I think to a barest minimum, we will be able to do something, that's reasonable. What do you think? Because I'm very particular about that area.
That area is actually very interesting, because you could see that the attack that was launched from the USS ship,
of course,
was launched at Sokoto,
yes,
and it was actually targeted to the insurgents inside the forests, deep inside the forest. And the forest is not too far from Sokoto itself. So that shows you how porous it is for insurgents to come from Nigeria and encompass themselves. And the interesting thing was that those places had been under surveillance for over a month. So that means those insurgents were there, they moving in, moving out while under there. So it's a major issue. And that's why I say things like drones. We cannot escape the use of drones. We cannot depend only on border patrols. We are limited in border patrols, but when we have drones that give us real-time information, this will even help enforce our border patrol, make them more effective, because now they will not just be patrolling in abject obstruction. They will actually be patrolling where there is need to patrol.
Yes.
Because when they see possibility of incursions coming into place, they can actually go there. Of course, Sokoto area is also affected now because of the insurgents, the bandits there, which has overwhelmed even the conventional military forces we have. So you can imagine how much more it will be for just the ordinary border control, which is immigrations and the customs that we have there, or even the NAPTI there. So for Sokoto area, it's a peculiar area. But notwithstanding, the government can still, with the addition of conventional soldiers manning the place as a booster to the normal border control that we have there. An introduction of drones that give us real-time information, and also adoption of satellite image, high-resolution satellite images that gives us routes, that gives us high-resolution image of how the routes and the terrain within that area is. In terms of the Sokoto, it's part of the Green Wall, which is meant to combat climate change. They want to plant 1 million trees along there to combat desertification. So I think some trees have been planted there, but notwithstanding,
that's not enough. It's not even going quarter. It's not even going quarter. So I think I would like you to speak to the people generally, because traffickers, even though we know they are schemers, they find a way to get into the heart of people, get them deceived and all of that. We also have people that are just overzealous. I don't just know the right word to use. They just want to go. They believe they need to cross the borders before they can make it in life. What do you think?
Actually, what you said is very interesting, because one of the people who not trafficker actually, well, I would say the people who volunteer themselves to be trafficked. Was deported sometimes in Italy back to the country, and there was saying he was still going back. And in less than 6 months, he has crossed the same desert again and has gone back. Though lucky for him, this time around, the desert underwent climate change. And so there was water there, the heat was reduced, and people were just strolling as if they were strolling their palo in the desert there. So, but for people, like I say, the love going abroad, it's very high, especially when you see those who have just come back. with the little bit of affluence here, you cannot but beat that human feeling that you too can, if you go, you too also,
You can make it.
you can make it or even do better to it. But the advice is that you should go through the legal means. Don't go through the illegal means. All that glitters is not gold. In the Mediterranean Sea in 2004, over 2,400 people died trying to cross the sea, mostly from Africa. Over 2,200 people died in the desert there. So it's a reality. Yes, some people make it. It's just a game of lucky. But you could also fall among the statistics. You could be among the 2004 or 2000 that perished there. So they should, and the money they collect from them, it's a lot of money because the money is more like a gambler's money, or it's scam money. They start with the little money from here to trafficking.
Gradually.
Once you get over there, you cross to Ilela, you start paying
They tell
more
you to
money.
pay another one.
You start paying another one that gets you to Sabata if you're lucky, even to cross. So the money, by the time you calculate it cumulatively, it's a lot. It's a lot of money that if they use it.
So that's trafficking plus extortion.
Extortion. So if they actually accumulated that money here, they could start a business here and do well. Or they could even use that money to go through the legal means and try their luck there. Instead of going through a desert mean where
And putting their life at
is not
risk.
your life is not as rich and you are going to meet strange people there. The Arabs are not too friendly with Africans. And that's the truth.
Wow.
And it's not just even through the legal means, even in the Middle East there's trafficking of servants, people for domestic service there, where they promise them.
And I think it's not even just between the Arabs and other. I remember one of our guests talking about having, Nigerians, also selling. It's hard for me to use the word sell.
We're coming back to the slave trade era. The real thing about slave trade wasn't the colonial masters that came and started picking people. It was we, our people, that started picking ourselves and selling to them.
So we give ourselves
We
out.
give ourselves out. If you go to Badagry, you see all the slave clothes there. The chains are still there. Where they put them, the point of no return. Yeah, once you get there, you walk straight to the ship there. So the similar thing too is happening in the trafficking. Those who were unable to cross over and who have ingrained themselves within the local community there have suddenly turned themselves into slave masters too,
Wow. Wow.
exploiting their people.
Wow.
There was one I even had. It wasn't even there. This one was in Udugwa in Burkina Faso, where they lured some Nigerians from here, promising them that they'll be giving them some dollars, some bits. And people sold their properties and went there, only for them to be housed in just a single house there and be told to start doing some marketing
Wow.
there.
Okay, so let's talk about the consequences or the penalties for these traffickers. How well would you say? Because I see, like you mentioned at the beginning of the program, that it's actually increasing. Is it that there are not enough consequences? Is it that they are not being captured? Is it that I don't know? Is it that they are not? We'll go back to enforcement again. So when they are captured, one way or the other, you see they give one very flimsy or very light penalty, and they are released. Before you know it, they are going back to it again, just like the one that came back and went back. So what do you think should be done?
The penalties are very minimal. Penalties are not enough deterrents for the traffickers and even the couriers themselves. Then to the prosecution, the detection of the crime itself, it's also very fundamental because this thing involves logistics. It involves money. The people, the victims, they pay money. So there's a financial chain that can be traced.
They are not bringing cash.
So they can trace this financial chain. They pay money. They pay money to an account. Somebody has their account. 9 Nigeria, have BVN, NIN. All these can be traced. Even those who are sent abroad to can also be traced. So there's a need to involve the financial institution. So it should not just be a NAPT thing. I said something earlier that it should be a collaborative thing.
Okay.
They need to involve the NFIU, National Financial Intelligence Unit, and the central bank too, so that they can trace this money trail. With this money trail, then they can have enough evidence to actually tackle the traffickers and their barons. And with this money trail, they can even be able to identify the accounts of the traffickers themselves, the brands themselves, and put a lien on it.
Okay.
That way, they divulge them of their money so that they don't have the funds to run this business. Because as long as they have funds, they will keep running the business.
Okay.
So this has to be put in place. Similar thing we have with the NEA, the drug enforcement thing. And the drug enforcement thing, we see a lot of enforcement going on. People are being caught, both traffickers and their barons and couriers. So similar things should also be replicated too into the trafficking.
All right. So we are just going to do this in 2 minutes because we're out of time already. Let's quickly talk about accountability, and you also wrap it up with the policy shift. So I want to ask you, do you think geospatial analysis support on early detection of trafficking activities can help protect vulnerable populations before harm occurs? That's one. And I want to ask you that in your own view, what is that single policy shift that you think would disrupt this trafficking activities, their network at the borders or wherever they found themselves? Let's do this in 2 minutes as we wrap up.
The policy shift has to be an organization of a task force, a multi-agency task force that looks at trafficking holistically, not just a NAPTI team, but looks at it in the financial way, looks at it in the logistics into it, and have a central command whereby they can monitor, real-time monitoring into it, play into it. It is with this now that they can actually properly map out their border assets, which they have in line, the border patrols, look at the coverage, look at the service gap, and put all this into play. With all this integrated into one singular platform, they can have a better defense mechanism and effective mechanism to actually nip the trafficking in bud and also combat the institutional gaps and the weak policy gaps that are in play as of now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kakpo Ayorinde. Thank you for your insights. Well, I know if I give you the time, you'll go on and on and on and talk about this, but this is where we want to call it a day. We want to say thank you for sharing this insight with us.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Yes, and that's it. We've actually talked about trafficking across borders. We've talked about the enablers. We've talked about accountability. He has been able to, shed light on all of this. And we are saying that we all need to be responsible. Everyone, we need to be responsible. We need to open our eyes. We need to be careful. Don't be too agitated. Don't be too over-expectant, like, no, it's not here, it has to be there, because these are ways of giving ourselves away. And it's my prayer that we don't fall victim. And as we call it a day on our cross-border, I am saying that, sure, we have taken out lessons. I know we have taken lessons from Dr. Kakpo Ayorinde's insight. Having this understanding is important, as it may come handy when we least expect. It is good to understand the patterns, the risks, and accountability gaps in human trafficking. Like I mentioned earlier, may we not fall victim. And that's a wrap on Across Borders this morning. Until next time, we will be coming your way again. We want to say that you continue to explore migration. And of course, we will do that. We'll bring you stories that shape human movement. Don't forget to follow us via social media platforms at Souk News TV, and also share your thoughts with us. On behalf of the Across Borders team, I am Grace Komolafe. Stay informed, stay safe, and keep the conversation going.